Hi, everyone. It's been a long time since I have live streamed over to my YouTube channel, but I am excited to be sharing today that I've been working behind the scenes on a new presentation and talk that offers some sage wisdom and early best practices for those interested in writing a memoir, or as we would say in the publishing world, a book about their life. So both this talk and the slide deck are in draft state, and I'm testing them in the wild, including doing it here live for the very first time. I would love your feedback. So if you're watching live, I would love for you to drop into the comments that you are here and that you are watching. And if you are not here live, but you end up seeing this on my channel after the fact, then I would love for you to put in the comments that you caught the replay. Either way, I'm looking for your feedback. So if there are places during this talk that could use some finessing, language is unclear or clunky, it brings up more questions, it feels a little bit awkward, whatever that kind of improvement feedback would be, I would love to hear. But of course, I would also love to know if it lands powerfully, if you feel empowered, if you feel inspired, if you learned something new. Any constructive feedback is really welcome because, as I said, this is new content. It's a test. You are quite literally watching me build this thing, and you're the first audience to receive it. So I'm super grateful for any feedback that's going to help the final iteration of whatever this becomes. And honestly, I just really want to help more people write a book about their life, but do it the right way the first time. And on that note, before I actually get going, if you know anybody that's thinking about writing a book about their life, then I would love for you to send this over to them, share it with them, and have them take a look at it, because honestly, they would be the perfect audience, in addition to yourselves, if you were also thinking about writing a book about your life. So thank you for your support as I create something new and beautiful to put out into the world about what I do. And I guess without further ado, here it goes. What every courageous woman needs to know before she writes a memoir that matters. And I want to begin here with a question. Have people ever told you that you're courageous, resilient, strong, but somewhere inside you think, nah, that's not me. I've merely lived through something that's changed me. And I've just survived. And maybe that thing broke me open. It might have been loss or a diagnosis, betrayal or death, or maybe it was a childhood that you had to recover from. It could have been a season of shame, silent grief, addiction, illness, reinvention. And then somewhere along the way, something shifted. Perhaps you got a quiet nudge or a tap on the shoulder or some sort of knowing. And maybe you call it intuition, or maybe you call it God or higher self. It doesn't really matter the who or the what or what you label it, but you know this much to be true. You can't keep carrying your story inside you anymore. You know you want to write a book about your life, what we would call a memoir. And yet, while even knowing that, something else happens. This other voice shows up. I like to call it the inner critic, but maybe you've got a different name for it. And they're asking you all kinds of questions as soon as you know that this is what you want to do. They're asking you, well, who's going to care about your life? And, well, what if people judge you? And what if you're not good enough to write a book? And what if someone remembers a detail differently than you do? And perhaps the hardest question that pesky inner voice is asking you is, what if I tell the truth and it actually costs me something? Now, if any of that sounds familiar, then this is the talk for you and you're in the right place. I'm Allie, and I help courageous women write the memoir that they wish they had when they were going through the hardest chapter of their lives. I'm a memoir coach, and today I want to share 3 things that every courageous woman needs to know before she writes a memoir that matters. Because it's true that your story matters. But not every life story automatically becomes a memoir that does. And so I've got 3 things today, and we're going to start with the first. You all, I lost my number one slide. But okay, number one, your story matters when it becomes bigger than you. One of the most common doubts I hear is, why would anyone care about my life? And I get it. When you're standing too close to your own story, it can feel ordinary. And you think, this is just what happened to me. But memoir isn't powerful because your life exact happened to someone else. It's powerful because of the meaning you make from it in a way that helps someone else understand their own life. And that's the art, that's the healing part of it. You take something deeply personal and you make it universal. So your story might be about I'm all confused, y'all. All right, hold on. There's the three things to know. And here's the number one. All right, I was just a little bit twisted up. All right, so your story matters when it becomes bigger than you. All right, so you take something deeply personal and you make it universal. So your story might be about loss, like a mother navigating the grief of addiction, like my client Susan. It might be about silence, growing up in a home where no one spoke about what was happening, like Christy, who survived a terrorist attack in New York City in the 70s, but whose family never really acknowledged it. And it might be about rebuilding after some sort of devastation, like Sheila, who lost her husband to a fast and fatal diagnosis and found herself in Africa, putting her life back together again. The details are yours, but the emotional truth might belong to millions because someone else knows shame. Someone else knows what it feels like to be silenced or to be lost, to wonder if they're the only one. But here's the truth. Not everyone should write a memoir. Some people are entertaining and some are great, telling stories at dinner parties. But a memoir that matters is not really about that. It's really about, this is what happened to me. But a memoir that matters is not, this is what happened to me. It's, this is what happened to me, and this is what it meant. That's the most important part. It's about what you've learned. It's about what you can offer to someone else. So before you write your memoir, you need to ask yourself, who is this for? And not in a marketing way, but in an impact kind of way. Who is still inside the cave that you've already walked through, and who needs your light? And that's where memoir begins to matter. So the first thing is, right, to recap, your story matters if and when it becomes bigger than yourself. Now, the second thing that I want you to know is that I don't want you to do it alone, because if you do, you're going to write the wrong book first, and that can get expensive. So let me just start off by saying this first thing. I don't believe in shortcuts. Memoir is not a write your book in a weekend kind of situation. It's not a get it done in 30 days. This is about working with emotional terrain. Okay. It's memory and meaning and identity, and it's your life, your art, and your legacy. So it deserves more than winging it. So let me show you what happens when someone tries to do it alone. And let's call her Leslie. So Leslie has wanted to write her memoir for years. So she buys notebooks, she opens documents, she writes a chapter, she rewrites it. She gets overwhelmed and she stops. And then she decides, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll take myself out of my real life and my real schedule, and I'll book an Airbnb for the weekend. And that will be the thing that will help me get it done. Pure focus, nothing else distracting me. And so she goes on that weekend away, and she's sitting there and she's thinking and she's thinking, and she freezes. The blank page is staring back at her. She doesn't know what to write about. She doesn't want to go back to the chapter she's already rewritten. She's circling around the past, and it all feels very haunting to her. And she's frustrated. And why wouldn't she be? Because it's her life. She should know it like the back of her hand. Why is it so hard to write about? And so the weekend passes and the manuscript doesn't get done. Her draft sits there for years, perhaps. And perhaps eventually, years later, she does finish a draft. And that feels like a victory to some extent. But then she sends it to a developmental editor, to the tune perhaps of 12 cents per word. And if that manuscript is hovering around 75,000 words, at that 12 cents per word, she's looking at $9,000 to get that developmental editor's feedback. And when that feedback arrives, the structure doesn't work. The meaning is unclear. The story is buried. and she needs to rebuild or really significantly rewrite. And what happens if she ends up trying to do all of that fixing alone, but still doesn't know really what she's doing? Then she pays for another review and doubles the cost. Now, none of this is Leslie's fault. She doesn't know what she doesn't know. She didn't have a process. She didn't have guidance. And I'm not here to shame or blame Leslie, because that's just not the way I roll. But it is heartbreaking. And that's the kind of heartbreaking that I don't want for you, because doing it alone doesn't save money. It actually costs more. It costs more in time. It costs more in energy. It costs more in emotional exhaustion. And that's not to say that having the right support doesn't cost money, because it does. It's an investment, to be sure. The finer things in life are rarely free, right? But it's certainly less of a total investment if you get it right from the beginning. So please don't walk this path alone. Write the right book the first time, which means having a clear story, a clear reader, a clear sense of meaning. You need to understand what belongs in the book and what doesn't, because telling the truth doesn't mean telling everything. It means telling it with intention. And I promise finding that kind of clarity when you've never done this before is less likely than if you worked with the right professional support at the outset. So I think I've made my case on that, which leaves us with number 3. You don't have to be a great writer yet, because I hear this all the time. So many women say to me, I'm not a good writer. And I always want to ask, but who is that according to? Are you thinking about your middle school English teacher who constantly told you weren't a good writer and marked up your papers with red pen? Or are you comparing yourself to a published author that has had an entire editorial team behind them in order to get to that final product? Why would you know how to write a memoir when you've never been taught? Writing by itself isn't a personality trait to begin with. And then every genre of writing has its own way about it. So writing is a skill, and skills can be learned. You don't get stronger by staring at the gym. You get stronger by going inside the gym, picking up the weights and doing the reps. And so it's the same thing with writing. It's a practice. It's something that you can learn. And I know that it's the thing that you want to be able to do on your own. You're not here to hire the ghostwriter or outsource your voice. You're here because you want to write your own story. You want to feel the power of putting your own words on the page, using your own voice, using your own hands, which means you become the writer. And you can. You don't have to start as a great writer. You just have to be willing to become one. Now, something else happens along the way. You don't just learn to write. You start to see your life differently. You gain agency and ownership and pride. And you imagine holding your book and thinking, that's mine. Not rushed, not outsourced, not half done, but true. And that's the goal, isn't it? Not just to write a book, but to write a damn good, emotionally compelling, super inspiring book that transcends from you to us. And that's the type of book that matters. So you don't just become the person who can write the story, become the woman who can hold it. So should you write a memoir? Maybe, but not because anybody told you to. Not because your life is dramatic, not because you want to prove something. You write a memoir if you feel called to turn your experience into meaning, if you're willing to make it universal, if you want to serve someone else without abandoning your truth, and you're ready to do it right. Now, deep down, you already know that you're not meant to do this alone, not because you're incapable, but because your story deserves support, structure, strategy, honesty. And that's why I created the Memoir Studio. It's for women who want to write their memoir the right way from the beginning. It's not about shortcuts. It's not about writing the book in 30 days. It's not about emotional dumping disguised as art. This is for the woman who says, I want to write this myself. I want to understand the process. I want my story to matter. So inside the Memoir Studio, we work on strategy, structure, writing, emotional terrain, and publishing. So you're not guessing your way through one of the most meaningful projects of your life. And I'll be honest, the work is intimate, so I don't work with everyone. Only women who are ready, only those who are honest and teachable and committed, because I don't see this just as any book. I see this as a mission. I see this as your legacy. So if something in you is saying, this is me, then your next step is to apply for one of my Memoir Studio intro sessions. It's essentially a consultation where we're going to talk about your story, your vision, where you are and whether this is the right fit. And if it's not, I'm going to tell you. And I promise to do it gently, but I am going to be honest. Because the truth here is that it comes down to the fact that the goal isn't to write any memoir, okay? It's to write the right one, the one that helps, the one that heals, the one that matters. Because somewhere in the future, there is a woman sitting alone with your book in her hands, and she's in the hardest chapter of her life. She's afraid, she feels misunderstood, and then she reads your words. And for the first time in a long time, she exhales and thinks, I'm not alone. And isn't that what matters? My friend, if your story has been calling you, it may be time to answer. And picking up the phone looks like booking that free intro session with me. Let's see if the Memoir Studio is exactly the right place at the right time for you to finally write the memoir that matters. Your memoir deserves support, and you deserve to honor your experience. And the world, well, it's ready for your words, your wisdom, and your light. Book that intro session today. I'm looking forward to speaking with you. All right, folks, so that is the end of the talk. Now, this was super helpful to me because I realized a couple of things. There are pieces missing from my talk, which is really good to discover, but also some of my slides are out of order, and I even think some of the slides are missing. So this has taught me a lot just by being able to do this with you live. But again, if you catch this as a replay, please, please, please plug your feedback into the comments. I would love to know how I can improve this talk for the future. Thanks so much.